everyone, Madeline Dell here, the chapter goddess. I am a mom, author, blogger, freelancer, podcaster, producer, and overall creative. With this show, I really want to focus on creatives and bring their authentic self to life. How are they motivated to pursue their passions? What have been the struggles along the way? Does self-care play an important role in who they are today and how they connect with the creative flow? Bringing one's authentic self to the forefront is important in this world that we live in currently. Sharing your self-care, your tips, and how you stay on track for things without losing it completely is also important. Self-care is not talked about enough, and authenticity and self-care are what I like to highlight with my creatives, as well as getting to know them. So get ready for a fun and entertaining show. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get ready to meet this episode's guest. Hey everyone, Madeline Dell here, the chapter goddess, and I am back with another fantastic guest for you guys to check out today. This author has a unique story out there for the world to see, and we're going to ask him some questions today to kind of dive into that story and learn what else goes on in this author's mind. But without further ado, let me bring them in and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, my name is DJ LeJeune. I am the author of Path of Relics, Ether Shard, and I am a geek. I'm a father, and yeah, I pretty much love all things technology and science. I love hearing the latest things coming out. So that's a good consolidation of what I am, I guess.
Yes, and it's totally like kudos to you for doing the dad life and the author life. It's hard. I'm a mom myself, so it's like when you're not pulling your hair out trying to get the kids to like go play with something, it's like, let me just write for 5 minutes. Give me that time. Just give it to me. And I want to apologize too if you hear my son in the background. It might happen. I've got cartoons on and it's starting to rain. So I'm like, okay, we can't go outside. So
mine just got home from school, so but we probably won't hear her. She disappears into her room at this point, and it's hard to see her nowadays.
Yeah, is she kind of teenage years?
She's a teenager now, yeah. Just turned 14, so.
Oh, yeah, I remember those days. I would go lock myself in the room and read a book, though.
Same.
Oh, that was me.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the Path of Relics. I'm assuming this might turn into a series?
Yes, that is the plan. I'm currently working on the sequel right now, the first draft, so, yeah.
Nice. Go ahead and tell me what goes on in the first book. Like, tell me a little bit about the story.
So it is... The short summary of it is that it's about the down on his luck guy in this job-starved future. It's 2044. Ooh. And he's a gamer, which kind of takes from me a bit. And he gets offered the chance to play the game of his dreams and to make money doing it. Mm. And it's this virtual reality game where when you're in it, it's real as life. It's like you're actually there. And it's fantasy, dungeons, fighting monsters and things like that. He's having a great time. But as he's playing the game, he starts to realize that things that happen in the game are causing malfunctions in real world Manhattan, and it's starting to kill people.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so it's like this blend of Ready Player One, Lord of the Rings, and Indiana Jones, pretty much.
Man, that's a nice mix. And the fact that it's like this virtual world's becoming real, too.
That's a big part of it, yeah.
Oh, how, what is it like? What do the people see when it kind of crosses over into the real world?
So some of the things that start happening, the first thing that is not much of a spoiler because it happens in the prologue, is that these characters in the prologue are in this seemingly fantasy setting, a medieval type setting. You know, they've got torches and swords, and they're in this dungeon and fighting monsters, and they're seeking something. And when they find it and do something immediately, when they do that, it cuts to a person in a floodgate. He's a floodgate operator in Manhattan, and he's freaking out because all the floodgates are suddenly opening and it's high tide. And this is in the future, so the gambit is that, you know, the water level is going to be higher, and that's not a good thing for Manhattan and New Jersey, that these floodgates are suddenly opening at high tide and he can't do anything about it. So from the beginning, you understand that something, whatever we just saw in the strange fantasy land, it's having an effect in real world too.
Oh man, that's crazy. So Terry is your main character of the story, right?
Correct, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Terry.
So Terry is what is called a Gurker in this future, and that is basically short for gig worker. And he has had a tough past, and he's doing the best he can to support himself and basically stay out of something called communal, which is basically government assisted living at that point. And he just has had really, really bad experiences with that. He does not want to go back to it. And so he basically works day and night as much as he possibly can, doing gig work to try and make ends meet, and in the hopes of maybe finding a steady job. But the other thing that's going on in this world is that because of flooding on the coast, because of AI starting to displace jobs, which we're already starting to see that with Chat GPT and DALL-E, OpenAI, and stuff like that. You know, because of those factors, jobs are very, very hard to come by, and the employment rate is very high. So that's where he starts out in the story. Is just he's really, really hardworking, but unfortunately doesn't have very high expectations for himself.
Ooh. I'm going to dig into his character a little more. Why is it he doesn't have doesn't set himself up for higher expectations? Is it something that happened in his past?
Yes, it's something about his history where he essentially, he was living a normal life, and then something happens in his past where his entire way of living when he was a child, it just gets wiped out, and he goes into this much harsher life, into a communal. And it knocked his confidence out right away. And then as he's coming up, you know, the story takes place in 2044. So I'm trying to remember, Terry might be alive today. I think he's going to be born in not too many years, you know, in other words, like if it were to really happen. So after all these things happened during his childhood, as he's coming out, that's really when this AI driven gobbling up of jobs starts to happen, you know. So it's very, very difficult to get a job. So he's basically, for most of his life, just been told, no, you can't. You're not good enough. You're not, you know, other people are more qualified, and there's not much opportunity, so you're not good enough. And so over time, that's just become his go-to way of seeing himself.
Man, that is rough. And does he ever interact with anybody that kind of tries to push him to be better?
He does. He has a roommate who you see is just in the beginning of the story, but his roommate does want him to see things differently. Later in the story, definitely he has some characters that try to get him to see things in a different light, in a different way, and to show him. That's really his journey, is to see what strengths he does have, and you know what he can contribute and what he is able to do, even though in the beginning he just really he can't get there. He just doesn't have the experience. He just hadn't had the things happen to him yet that can allow him to see that.
Man, fascinating. What is his biggest lesson that he learns just in the first book without going into the other ones? What is one of the first lessons here? Let me rephrase that. What is one of the biggest lessons he learns?
One of the biggest lessons would definitely be, I mean, akin to believe in yourself, but it's more, you know, that he does have worth. He can contribute something, and he can make a positive difference in the world. You know, it's kind of all of those things, you know, jumbled into one, but that's the gist of it, what he finally comes to see.
Yeah. Where did the inspiration come from for him?
Partially from myself. My past, I've always struggled with insecurity and low self-esteem, and I had a long journey of working through that. And I feel like I finally have. I mean, I don't think you ever truly get over those types of things. Everybody has that to a certain extent, but I've come a long way myself in working through those issues. And it was natural for me just to write my main character with that as part of his flaw. You know, it's something I knew very well. It's something that I was passionate about, you know, because I've seen what that can do to a person's life, you know, not having that sense of worth in yourself, that sense of, knowing what you're capable of. And, I've seen the difference it can make when you finally get over that hurdle. So it's a topic that I'm passionate about, for one. So, and I've heard a lot of authors say that for their first novel, they usually end up writing a version of themselves. You know, is what naturally comes out most of the time. But yeah, definitely my own history was a big inspiration in his inner journey. And I've also done a lot of gig work myself in the past, so that definitely made its way into the story.
I want to know more about the world that you have Terry in. What are some of the things you pulled in to create his world, since it's kind of like near future sci-fi? Let's dive into that. Tell me what his world looks like.
Yeah. So it's interesting in this novel because it's something. It's definitely science fiction. It falls firmly into science fiction. It also has a subgenre of something called game lit or lit RPG. Yeah, I might not consider lit RPG light. It's not quite as with people who are real fans of the genre called crunchy. It's not quite as crunchy as other lit RPG. But because of that and the way the story works, is there's two worlds really. There's the real world and the future of 2044, and then there's the fantasy, high fantasy world of Path of Relics. And as far as the future world of 2044, it is definitely a bit cyberpunk. You know, it's I took from a lot of just my passion for technology and following what's happening now, what we think might be available in the near future. I mean, we're already seeing virtual reality has become more popular, and a lot of the big companies like Microsoft and whatnot are working on AR, augmented reality, glasses and things like that. So it takes a lot of that and says, okay, what will that be like in 2044? And a lot of this world, augmented reality, AR, is just a part of life. It's everyone has either augmented reality glasses that look just like sunglasses or prescription glasses or contacts, that they can use, and they can go into a horrible apartment that they might live in and turn it into this fantasy keep, that looks like they're in a castle or something, and it would look just like they were actually there, and advertising would play big into that too, right? So in the story, you'll see Terry walking down the street and these advertisements will just run out in front of him and promote something, right? But it's a projection. It's not actually there. The game that Terry is really good at, he uses it to make money, is called Kali Ball, which is based off of martial arts Kali sticks, which is just like these 1.5, 2 foot long sticks. And it's actual martial arts, but the game is just like a version of sort of Beat Saber, but it's these balls that he's hitting and you're fighting against somebody, and that's all augmented reality, So those are big parts of it, of the future of my story, at least. I've already mentioned that things like artificial intelligence taking over jobs and causing unemployment that's another big part of the story as well. Yeah.
Man. So does that cause a lot of homeless problems within the story as well?
It does. And that's a big thing that Terry is struggling with throughout the story, is that for reasons that you find out, he just doesn't want to go back into communal. And so his main motivation in the beginning of the story, at least, is he needs to make money somehow. And something happens in the prologue. I mentioned the flood, where he gets put into a tough position where he has to make a decision. Does he kind of keep on going and with the life that he's known so far, or does he take this chance with this crazy invite for this game that he's gotten, for Path of Relics, where he could possibly win money, but he really doesn't stand much of a chance in that either. So it's a tough decision for him.
Ooh. Tell me more about the communal. What is it exactly?
So communal is something that communal and basic. So basic is like basic income, and communal is just another form of housing that the government provided. And it was something that pretty much everyone in this point in the history of my story, they agreed was necessary, because there were so many people unemployed, so many homeless, that it pretty much had to happen. And basic as well, because the employment rate was getting up to 20-30% or something like that, or higher, and people just didn't have any way to make any income. So communal is essentially a place where a large portion of the population is starting to have to live in the story, just because they have no other options. And even someone like Terry, he works day and night and struggles, and he tries for interview after interview to try and get something more steady, but it just doesn't happen.
Man, and I don't think that would not help his self-esteem and anything.
Exactly.
Oh, man. I want to ask, when did you figure out you wanted to become an author?
That's an interesting one. So I first knew I had at least a little bit of skill in it when I was in grade school, and we would have English writing projects, and I'd get up, back then it's like, oh, you got to get up in front of class and read your story that you wrote.
Yes.
And, it's like, I don't know I guess they still do that. I don't know. But whenever I would get up and read my story, everyone seemed to love it. And I'd tell like funny stories and things back then. So that kind of encouraged me. And then, writing projects throughout grade school and high school. And then in college, I minored in creative writing. Ooh. And got to do a lot of short stories and learn about writing that way. But then I pretty much left that alone for decades after that. And but all the time I knew, like, what I went to college for is I wanted to be a director originally. And that didn't pan out, but it was that same passion to want to be able to affect people's emotions in a certain way with something that I wrote. Because I just remember watching a movie and seeing the credits roll and feeling how I felt after a great movie. And I was like, I'd love to be able to do this for people too, and that was really, I think, when I knew I wanted to do something creative in that vein. I focused more towards video and film at that time. But, fast forward to about 3 or 4 years ago, and I finally just said, hey, I've been wanting to do this all my life. Let's make it happen. I guess, like Terry, I finally had enough examples to show me that, hey, you can probably do this. You're good enough to at least give it a go, right?
Yeah.
And so, I started, doing some more research again, like kind of learning what the publishing market looked like today and what it took to get a book out there. And, it took me about 2.5 years for this first novel, just because I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Figure out a lot as I went. So that's pretty much when it started. Was, I think, grade school and right before high school, and it's just kind of been in the back of my mind until now.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on independent publishing versus traditional publishing?
Yeah. My first instinct was to go for independent publishing. And the reason is that I was in a writers group. I'm in a writers group now, but I was in another one here where I live, and one of the people in my group, she got a contract, book deal to do 3 books, and her book was really good. It was really good in romance, so very big market. And from her experience, she said essentially they didn't promote her book at all, and this is a traditional publisher. And she said that, and I've kind of done some research after it, and I've seen that this is, for the most part, it's true, is that even if you get picked up by a traditional publisher, in most cases, you're not going to get much in the terms of marketing from them. You have to do all your own marketing and worry about your book out there on your own, still, for the most part. And you make less commission or royalties because you have so many other people to pay and things like that. So I'm not saying that it's not the way to go for maybe one day I will try traditional publishing, but for me, I figured, if I'm going to have to do all of the marketing on my book anyway, then why not just go independent publishing, where I would get a bigger share of that and kind of have more control over what I wanted to put out there. And so that's the reasons that I went with it. There's obviously a lot more to it.
Yeah.
And I'm probably not giving traditional publishing the shake that it deserves, because there are some great pros to it as well.
But there has definitely been an increase in self-published authors and a rise in how well books have turned out too. I've started asking others their thoughts on that, because it's a curious question, and there's always stuff you can pick up.
Yeah, for sure. It's a big question that any first-time author is going to have to ask themselves, but so.
Yeah, and you really don't know the ins and outs of it until you dive into it. And I think the marketing thing was something that's happened in more recent years, but that would suck. I mean, I'm a self-published author too, so I already I do all the marketing and stuff on my end, but it's a lot.
Oh yeah, it is a lot. Yes. Ooh. And that is one thing that is a difference. So if an author is out there who doesn't want to deal with any of the marketing and getting the word out about yourself, maybe you start with traditional publishing, and as you kind of grow with them, they do start to take over that for you. But usually in the beginning, you're still going to have to do a good bit of it yourself.
Yeah. So what drew you to write a science fiction story?
Science fiction is just, like I said in the beginning, I'm a geek. I'm a geek and a nerd at heart, and I always have been. So my novel of choice has always been science fiction books. Give me a book with a spaceship on it, or some mysterious looking thing out in space, and I'm probably going to buy it. Even movies and things too. It's just the genre that I've always loved. And with my love for technology and whatnot, I'm always wondering what would it be like to experience this thing that we can't experience yet. What would it be like to experience this technology when it matures, like virtual reality? In the way in my book, it's not just virtual reality. It's basically it's kind of like the holodeck from Star Trek, but implemented in a much, much different way. So, those types of questions, I love that. I love asking what will this be like? What would that be like to experience? What would it be like to go to be like a colonist on Mars? What would it be like to be on a space station that's rotating in space? What would it be like to live there? Those types of things, we can't experience that now. And it just, that's so intriguing to me, is to ask those questions and to explore them. So that's the big reason I went with science fiction, is just, there's so many possibilities, and it's just fun to be able to explore those questions and those possibilities.
Yeah. I feel like we're kind of on the cusp of like having those kind of things too, with like the space station and life on Mars. Like I feel like we're like at the, just like gonna break through and it's gonna happen, which
Yeah,
is
me
so
too.
weird because when I was a kid, that was like still way out there. And now we're here and it's like, holy cow, this could happen.
I actually saw a meme. I don't know when it was from. It might have been from the 1930s or something like that. And
Yeah.
it was in the distant year 2003, humanity has spread throughout the galaxy. And it's like, oh, old science fiction, you had such high hopes for us.
I know, right? And they're like, that was like about the time cell phones were just now really getting like big.
Right, yeah.
If I have my timeline right in my head. Oh my gosh.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Another fun question for you. What do you define success as when it comes to your new writing career?
Mm. So it has layers, I think. I already consider myself a success in the fact that I finished a novel and got it out there and published it. You know, that's success, you know. And when I was working on that novel, that was definitely that was what I was aiming for. But as you know, success stretches out. I forget the term they say for it, but the goal is always moving, the goalpost is always moving, and now I'm definitely, obviously I'm working on the sequel, and I have at least maybe 4 to 5 books in mind for this series that I'm working on now. But the ultimate goal is just to be able to call myself a full-time author, just to be able to support myself and my family from writing. And I know that's probably a ways off, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with going the distance.
Yeah.
It's just something I've always wanted to do, and I'm okay with it taking a while, if it needs to take a while.
Yeah, it gives you something to work toward. So
Yeah.
that's not a bad goal. I have something similar, and I have all these other projects that I'm doing to bring in income, but I'm getting there. So
Yeah.
If you could offer a tip or a piece of advice to another author that's just starting their journey too, what would you suggest?
So many possible pieces of advice here. A big one is what I suppose I was just talking about, is to allow it to take the time it needs. It's probably going to take longer than you think it's going to take. We always focus on those stories of someone who wrote their first book and it just takes off and it's amazing. And
if only that really happens,
right?
I mean, those are fantasies.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, those stories are so famous because, I mean, obviously that's what you have in mind, because that's all you hear about. You don't hear about the hundreds, thousands of other authors that are just plugging in day after day to get where they want to be. But that's usually the case. Most times for most authors, it's going to be working hard and putting your first novel out there and getting some success, but probably nowhere near what you would hope for. And then you get your next one and it just builds and builds and builds. So that is normal.
Yeah.
That's the normal for most people that are trying to do this. So just go in with that expectation, still knock it out of the park, write your best book, get a great cover, all of that stuff that you need to do anyway. But let it take the time that it needs, and just keep showing up, day after day, and eventually you'll get there.
And I'm curious about what your method of writing is like from start to finish. Did you plan out the story? And what was your editing process like?
I'm a bit of a hybrid author. So I plan out in the beginning. So I write an outline. I base my stories off of a 6-act formula, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
But I find that much easier than people talk about the 3-act formula, and that's just useless to me. It's like, I don't know. It just doesn't give enough detail of things to think about what could happen in the story next, So having something like a 6-act works better for me. And I'll generally start by just coming up with ideas. Just I might have a general idea of what I want the story to be, and I'll take from different places, and it just starts building. I think I've heard it called plot gardening. Oh, actually, I think Chris
Ooh,
Fox
I
wrote that
like
book.
that.
Well, I
Plot
didn't coin it.
gardening?
I think Chris Fox is the one who wrote a book called Plot Gardening, and that's his term for it. But yeah, it's just you're planting these little seeds of ideas. You're kind of letting them stay in your subconscious. I keep a Evernote document where I'll collect things as they come to me, and eventually it starts to take shape after a while. And that's definitely how Path of Relics worked. And from there, I'll just start asking myself questions about the story. You know, what might happen, what could happen. Let's look at, you know, the outline of these 6 acts, like what might go where, you know, those types of questions. And eventually I'll get through most of that outline. What generally happens, and what has happened in the first book and in this the sequel, is that once I get up to like the 4th or 5th act, it gets sort of muddy. You know, it's sort of in my mind, I'm just a little fuzzy on what is going to happen there. And so at that point, I'll write out some summaries for some chapters, and that's really where it starts to be more a pantser, where it starts to become more discovery writing. I'll have an idea of what I want to happen in the chapter, and as it's happening, like I don't know what's going to come next, I'll just start writing it, and the story will come to me as it happens then. And once I get through the 2nd into the 3rd act of 6, I have a much better idea of where I want to go for, you know, the final part of it. That's generally my process.
And then the editing process, do you do it in layers?
Definitely. So I hate first drafts with a passion.
Yes.
I hate first drafts. And it's funny because, you know, my daughter, like I mentioned, she's 14 and she doesn't know what she wants to do with her life, which is fine. She's 14.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to stress to her that, you know, even if you are doing the job of your dreams, there's always going to be something about it that's not perfect. You know, there's always something about anything. There's pros and cons to anything that you do. And for me, one of the cons is definitely writing the first draft. It's just pushing through it and feeling like I usually feel like it's hollow, like it's like a skeleton of a story, you know. And I'm definitely dealing with that now as I'm pushing through the first draft of the sequel. So once I'm done with that, though, I let it sit for 2-3 weeks, and then I go back to it and I'll make a revision document. So I'll read through the whole thing. I won't edit anything as I'm reading through it, but I'll create that revision document and say, you know, change this. This is a problem. There's a plot hole, yada, yada. And I might even go chapter by chapter with that. And from that, I'll start to revise, do the second draft. And usually on that second draft, I'm in the writing group I'm in. I'll put those out for critiques just to kind of get some eyes on it.
Yeah.
And then I take those critiques and I go through another, you know, revision document for the second draft to do the third draft. So, and after that, it generally is the shape of the story that I want to be. It's more just polishing after that point for me. Yeah.
I like it. I feel like it's very common for people to do like editing in layers, but there's always different methods to it that people use. So it's kind of curious. It's a curious thought, I guess, to kind of pick people's brains about it. Because there's a lot to editing, and it's almost never ending. The manuscript's never going to be completely perfect, but you'll get it as close to perfect as possible.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand. I know I've seen interviews of authors who say they will write the first draft, they'll get a little bit of feedback, they'll go through it really quickly, making small changes, and that's it. It's like, how do you do that? It's crazy.
That's like anxiety inducing for me. So like, no. There's still stuff that gets missed. So
yeah.
Cool.
Too much to
Another
at once.
fun question that I like to ask every creative I bring on the show is, what do you do for self-care?
Yeah, I liked that question. You kind of mentioned that one to me before. And over the years, I've definitely found that's important. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's a few things. Some of them are more like physical, working out type of things. Other ones are more mental. So I found out that I can't It's not that I can't, but I don't know. So it's hard for me to actually work out. Like I won't commit to it. So what I started doing that I've been doing for years now is just little small workouts, push-ups one day, maybe do squats another day. Just, it's something that keeps me active and I'm able to commit to it because it's small. And that's one thing you always feel better after you work out. So that's one thing I do. I try to walk around the block. In the mornings, I'll, get my coffee and I'll sit on this little stationary cycle that we have set up in front of a television. And, I'll just watch some YouTube and cycle. So that's something that I do. As far as more mental stuff, I do appreciation audits. I'll have a to-do app that will pop these little reminders up, do appreciation audit for 5 minutes today. Think back over some of your prior successes throughout your life. Those types of things, they're little, but I think just having that consistent habit of doing those types of things, it makes a difference. And besides that, I don't get enough sleep. So sleep, enough water, all those things, it all adds together.
Sleep is definitely an important one for sure. Self-care is something I've learned to put more emphasis on, especially becoming a parent. It's like you need a whole other level of self-care once you become a parent. And it's just, you got to learn it,
You do.
Final question. What do you have planned for the future?
Yeah, so the sequel to Path of Relics, I plan to release later this year. So that will be this year. And then, as I mentioned, it's going to be probably 4, maybe 5 books in the series. So at my current rate, the second novel is probably going to take me about a year. I'm hoping to whittle that down as I, just grow in skill and just learn how my own process works. So that will be, the next probably couple of years or so. I'll be working on this sequel, our series. And then, I have other series in mind after that. I have several flash fiction stories that I've written that I'd like to try and start publishing those this year as well. So those are the big goals as far as writing, for sure.
Nice. Yeah, flash fiction is fun. You can also compile like a little booklet of them and do it like that too, like almost like a box set with flash fiction.
Yeah.
That's cool. And creativity does take time. I just remember that and keep it in mind. But yeah, creativity definitely takes time and patience to make it like fit who you are. Yeah, I have to remind myself that a lot too, because I get in this mindset that I'm like, we need to get all this done right now. And it just does not work.
True.
Yeah. But DJ, go ahead and tell our listeners and viewers where they can find you and your work.
Sure. My novel, Path of Relics, Ether Short, it's on Amazon. You can search Path of Relics on there, or DJ LeJeune. You should find it. It's also on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, you can read it there. And if you would like to check out my website, it is at DJL Author, as in an author who writes, djlauthor.com.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. And guys, while you're watching, hit that like button and subscribe. Make sure you check out this author's work and snag his book. DJ, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, Madeline. I really enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to get future notifications when shows come out. Also, be sure to check out my website. I have a blog featuring this creative with some other fun and interesting questions. You can also subscribe to my newsletter there to stay up to date with all things the Chapter Goddess and Madeline Dale. Once again, thanks for watching and have a great rest of the day.